Okay, so with that, let's get into the topic. So I'm trying to keep this topic as basic, as simple as possible. So people who have enough exposure for sepsis, as well as people who have no exposure to sepsis, should be able to understand. So uh, idea is that can nurses play a fantastic role in stopping sepsis in its tracks, which I think is possible because we tend to understand sepsis in a different context. So let's see that together we are going to know what is the burden of sepsis, sepsis prevention and early detection, early warning signs, 1 hour sepsis bundle, nurses making the difference. And those who are working in ICU and ER, I am very sure that you have heard of many of these things. So today we'll sew this story together so that when you go out from here, you're far more informed, and wherever you are able to play that role that is required to ensure that your patients are safe. So let's get into that. Now, where did the sepsis word come from? The sepsis word actually comes from the Greek word called sepo. And that's very interesting thing which I did not know. I actually found out only recently that the word is sepo. And let me just write that down for you so that this is a you know nice general knowledge to have, and it's very interesting. If you go back and share this with someone, you can always tell this. So that word is called sepo. So this is sepo, and the meaning is I rot. So this is actually a very negative thing. It's like rotten. So I think that is what sepsis finally does. It actually decays the body. And the sepsis, the context, I'm sure that many of us know Dr. Ignace Semmelweis. He is called the father of, asepsis, and also he's the father of hand hygiene. So he was an Hungarian doctor, worked in Austria in 1840s, and the wards were that time not clean, and that he is the father who detected what is puerperal sepsis. I'm sure that many of you know that. So with that acknowledgement to Dr. Semmelweis from 1840, let's get into the topic and see what can we address. So what is sepsis? Sepsis is definitely a life threatening condition that occurs. So usually what happens is that there is some kind of an infection that we have picked up, and then the body starts to react to it, and it starts to damage its own tissues. Now with COVID-19, I'm very sure that a lot of you are exposed to this sepsis. When the infection fighting process turn on the body is actually trying to help themselves, but then unfortunately it turns again against itself. So that is where the challenge of sepsis comes. So it is better to find the sepsis much before all this damage can be done. So let's try to understand what is the burden of sepsis. So these are some data from coming in from US, where 258,000 Americans die due to sepsis, every year. And sepsis is the third leading cause of death in the US. And 1.6 million cases of sepsis in the US every year, and 55% of Americans have heard of the word sepsis. Now, if we ask Indians, what is the percentage of people who will actually know the word sepsis? I doubt it, because there is no such study that is available. And the sepsis does not spare anyone. It is from neonates to adults, everybody is there, but there are some high risk, population who are there. Now, let's try to understand that what is the burden in India? Now, that's a very interesting thing to know, that there are not many studies. When I was trying to look around, can I find more information? So what I found was that the study found that the sepsis death rate is 213 per 1 lakh people in India. And you can see our neighboring countries' number. Some of our neighbors are doing a little better, and we are not doing that great. So it is a genuine and real problem. And this is something that all of us need to understand. So I'll building the story to understand that why nurses should be worried about it at all. Okay, so sepsis is underreported in India. So this is something very nice to remember, or very nice to learn, that we are not yet sure what is it that we are handling, because the data that is available is not clear. I mean, we know that in the world there are 30 million sepsis cases, and out of that 5 to 6 millions they die annually. So any potential data in India is likely to be hospital based, and hence the underestimate, as it will not capture the information of number of people who do not seek medical. So we really don't know whether patients are dying outside hospitals because of sepsis. We are not very sure. So a study published in 2016 reported that nearly 30% of patients who are admitted to our ICU will develop sepsis, and 1 in 3 of these patients will die. So that is a whole lot of burden on our Indians. And then of course studies have reported higher burden of sepsis in pregnant mothers and newborn. So we are all aware of the puerperal sepsis. So once again, to put the context in place, it's very important to remember that across the world, now this is data from WHO, that there are 30 million people worldwide, 3 million newborns, 1.2 million children, can kill 6 million people, and kills up to 5 lakh newborns, and causes 1 in 10 maternal deaths. Now, that is a whole lot of burden, and we should be worried about sepsis, I'm very sure. And we know that in our ICU, many of our patients, they'll end up being taking the, getting some sort of infection. And let's try to understand that who all are at risk. Now, it's very important that you pay attention to what is being discussed here, so that if at all you want to go ahead and do a post test and get your certificate, so all that is required in the test is being discussed here. So this is something nice that you pay attention. Yes, yeah, the video will be available for you to go back and look at it again. So who is at risk of sepsis? Anyone with an infection can develop sepsis, but some are more at risk. So it will be like, if I get a cut in my finger, I am at risk at sepsis, but I may not develop that based on my immunity. But there are some population which is already recognized as at higher risk. Who are they? They are the pregnant women, neonates, the elderly, the immunocompromised, patients with chronic disease, and all hospitalized patients. Now, this is where I think most of us have to remember that once we enter the hospital, the risk of us getting sepsis is far more than being out in the community. Okay. So this is something I would like you to just keep that in mind. Okay. So let's try to understand. We finished that. So a quick look at a few acronyms. So I'll be taking you through certain acronyms for you to remember the learnings of today, and it's very easy to remember. So all the countries across the world, have got focus, especially developed countries. They have a lot of focus on sepsis and public education, etc. Now, this is from Sepsis Alliance, and they have come up with this acronym TIME. So looking for temperature, infection, mental decline, and extremely ill. I will be taking you through the acronyms which are created by Society of Critical Care Medicine and, Sepsis for Survival, SSC, Survival Sepsis Campaign, okay? So now let's try to quickly understand a little bit of pathophysiology. I will try to keep it as simple as possible so everybody can understand, so that, we understand what is happening inside the body. This is important for us to know how serious it is. Okay, just give me a minute. Let me get my laser pointer. Okay. So what happens is that you have some form of local infection. Okay. From the infection, it can be by the bacteria, virus, or fungi. So any one of them is causing infection, and then they enter the bloodstream. So when they enter the bloodstream, the body starts the immune system. They start to respond. And then the immune cells are trying to fight against the bacteria. But unfortunately, it gets into a uncontrolled inflammation inside the body. And so there is a lot of things which are happening, a lot of scientific words are there. But finally, when that thing does not get under control, it leads to organ damage and death if left untreated. So it is better to catch the sepsis on its tracks and stop it there. So we are trying to understand all these so that, we are able to be a little bit more informed so that we can work around that knowledge and help our patients. So common infection that can lead to sepsis. See, the most important, focus of infection that can become sepsis is that 35 percentage they had lung infection, 25 percentage they had urinary tract infection, 11 percentage some kind of a gut infection, and then 11 percentage had a skin infection. Now that's very interesting to note that any of these infections, when it is there, our antenna should be little up to know that, maybe this is going to create a trouble. So that's why we are more worried when patients are admitted with pneumonia, UTI. We should not take all these things very lightly, that this patient has got hospital acquired infection. Now that infection will not take much time to become sepsis. So we call it septicemia in the ICU, struggling to, treat the patient. So we are all aware of such things. So let's try to understand a bit more. So here, again, as I told you, the inflammatory process starts when the chemicals are released in the body, and then they have a lot of action that happens. We will understand that little bit in details in a moment, but it's very interesting to know that this sepsis causes very funny, contradicting situation inside the body. That means it will lead to leaky vessels. That means the blood will actually, the fluid and the blood can actually leak out, and it also causes coagulation. So there is clotting and there is bleeding. So that's where you get this DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, where both things are happening, and this is very difficult to manage the patient. They are clotting, and inside the body they are clotting, and elsewhere they are bleeding. So very, very challenging to look after these patients. And I was speaking to one of the office bearers, intensivists from Indian Sepsis Forum. So I was asking him that, doctor, that, how much are we focusing on this? In abroad, there are countries who are focusing on nurse-led interventions for sepsis, because they think nurses are the first people who can identify that the sepsis is going to happen and catch the patient and escalate. That's the most important thing. And if you go to YouTube, you will find there are a lot of webinars conducted by US, where they have a lot of research and studies where they have used nurses working in the regular wards, medical surgical wards, OPD, emergency, and ICU. Of course, there are more tuned that patients could be at the risk of infection, but it's those patients who are outside where we need to pay far more attention. So it's very important to know that we are not handling something very simple. It's a very, very complex phenomenon which is called the sepsis. Okay, just give me a minute. The slide seems to be okay. This particular one, I'm going to ask you to just bear with me a little bit. So I'm going to keep this over here. So I'm going to explaining this is a little bit on the pathophysiology. It's a very nice chart that I found. So I will be using a lot of pictures and charts just to explain these things, rather than writing a lot of text. So let me get my pen out there. So just pay attention. So I'm going to get my pen up. Just give me a minute. Okay. So let's see, this is where the story starts, that you have bacteria, fungi, virus, parasite, whatever. So you can get the infection either from the community or you can get it from hospitals. So we understand that you can get it from any of these sources. Okay, so you have a patient who is getting the community acquired and hospital, and then there is infection to the host. Now, it is very important to understand that comorbidities will ensure that, the pathogen gets more virulent. We know that, patients who are weak, a particular pathogen will not cause anything in one patient, but on the other patient, it will cause all kinds of havoc because they are pathogen and they have comorbidities, and also vulnerable infection site, as we said, the lungs, the urinary tract, they tend to be at higher risk of, turning into sepsis. So these are some information that if we carry, we can be more aware that what kind of patients that we are managing. Then, of course, the innate immune system, we don't know that how the immune system of each patient is working. So that is something to be kept in mind. Okay, so then we have the infection that is happening in the patient. Okay, so here the infection is happening, and then the immune response starts. Let me get that pen. So then the immune response starts, and then we have fever, leukocytosis, or leukopenia. And there is some changes that happens in the neutrophils, so those kind of changes happen, and then the body starts to have compensatory response, and that this is normal thing for any kind of infection. We all have learned this. The body responds by increasing the temperature or the pulse, etc. But when is the trouble? When they start having breathing difficulty and there is altered level of consciousness or the hypotension, which is kind of telling that this is what is happening inside the body. And here what is happening, the patient who is going to get into sepsis, they have a dysregulated. That means the immune response is not as normal. So it is kind of becoming too much anti-inflammatory response. So what happens? The perfusion to the vital organs and oxygen delivery to the organs are reduced, I'm sure, because we'll understand a little bit more that how the perfusion is going down. So this is what is happening inside the body, and all the inflammatory responses are happening and the organ disinfection starts. So on the right hand side, you can see that the sepsis which is happening is leading to organ dysfunction, and this is because of the dysregulated host response to infection. So that does not mean that every patient who is going to get infected is going to go into sepsis. So now this is something we are going to learn in a moment, is that this assessment tool called SOFA or QSOFA. QSOFA is what we are going to understand. This is being used to identify the patients at risk. I think nurses play a great role in identifying patients who are at risk for sepsis. So then what happens? So the body is definitely reacting abnormally. So all these things starts to happen. Your oxygen saturation PaO2 levels are going down. And the patient nervous system get this level of consciousness get altered. Mean arterial pressure is going down. The liver is increased bilirubin, kidney functions are going, coagulation, as I told you, there is bleeding as well as there is clotting. Now, this is very, very serious matter that is happening. And if the patient is not taken care at this stage, then they go into septic shock. And, then they go further down, and then, you are trying to give vasopressors, etc. And then finally, if the patient does not respond, we lose our patient. Okay. So this is a serious matter, and this is what we are trying to help by identifying the patients on time. So a simple diagram again. I'm spending a little repetition of the same thing happening so that, even if you don't remember the nitty-gritty of it, this is something that all of us can remember, is that there is a source of infection. The bacteria enters, or the bacteria or virus or fungi, the common ones are these, they enter and they start a pro-inflammatory response. And then when that is happening, there is obviously vasodilation, and all of us know, those who have learned anything about sepsis, you know, you understand warm shock. Okay, the class is not about shock, but we know that in sepsis the body tends to be warm, not unlike the other shocks, you know, where you have cold and clammy skin. That happens at much later stage. So the bacteria enters, all these responses start leaking from the blood, and from the blood vessels clotting is happening, then all the organs are getting, you know, disturbed, and finally if it is not taken care of, then we lose our patient. So now we are going to understand how do we prevent, and to prevent we have to detect early. Now we understand that the public in India is not so much educated, but it is good to know some basics. So this is from WHO Global Sepsis Alliance. The why so much of focus is being made on this, and you will find huge number of creatives and information on the net. It's because, you know, this is really killing a lot of people. So if you look at here, we can see that, you know, most of the stuff in public health is here. Vaccination, yes, you're seeing that vaccination prevents, clean water prevents. So what we are talking is to prevent the basic information to start with, you know, to prevent the basic information to start with. Hand hygiene, sorry, let me go back. Okay, hand hygiene, prevent hospital acquired infection. Now we understand that where this is, you know, this is has got direct linkage with the sepsis. Allowing safe childbirth, and then awareness. And this is something that, at least not in India, the public is not aware of sepsis and how to prevent, you know. We usually we tend to talk about, you know, vaccination separately, clean water separately, and then we talk about actually infections, but we never tell the public that infection can turn to sepsis. So that is why this awareness is very important, that, you know, all these basic measures are very important, and all of us know the cornerstone of hospital acquired infection. Can somebody type in the chat box what is the cornerstone of hospital acquired infection? I'm sure that all of us have learned all this stuff. So can someone just type in the chat box and tell me that what would be the cornerstone of hospital acquired infection? I cannot unmute. You can just give an answer on the chat box. Thank you, hand hygiene. Thank you very much for that immediate answer. So that is something we should know. It is as basic and as simple as hand hygiene. So just keep that in mind. This is very important. Thank you so much for your answers. Now, the common sources of infection, as we told you, the main culprits are mostly the lungs, as we told you, the lungs and the urinary tract infection. You know, that urinary tract infections and lung infections, they tend to become sepsis far more, you know, common than other types of, you know, infections. So this is a picture which this kind of depicts that, you know, what all infections can happen. Meningitis, infection unknown. Now today with, you know, COVID-19, this is SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, pneumonia, bloodstream infection, appendicitis. So what this is trying to tell is that all your basic infections, like somebody is having UTI, we may not think a lot about it, and we will say, oh, patient is having UTI, and, you know, the patient is put on antibiotics, patient is on nalidixic acid, the common urinary tract antibiotic, but they are the ones which can turn into sepsis. So in our hospital, we know that even a patient who is getting a very soft tissue injury and a small infection at the finger can blow up into sepsis and septic shock if the given environment is not right. And, you know, they are weak, they have comorbidities or their age factor, you know, so they are of the vulnerable category. So that's why when we identify patients who are vulnerable, let us not always think that vulnerability is related to patient falling or anything. That vulnerability is more related to this also. Basically, they are at great risk to catch any kind of infection, and that leading to sepsis. So this is very important to be kept in mind. Okay, so let's try to. I will be repeating this word sepsis, 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 just to prove it to all of you that this is such a common thing that is happening, and um, we may or may not be aware of it. So those who are aware, this is a good revision for all of us, so that we start becoming champions to prevent sepsis. So life-threatening illness, tissues, and organs are all damaged. So we hope that none of us have to get into that kind of a situation. Okay. So now, how to prevent sepsis? Now, this is a nice infogram from the WHO, and you can see here sepsis can be prevented first of all by preventing infections. That's an interesting thing, yeah. In hospitals, all of us are trying to prevent patients from getting infection. So suddenly, sepsis is related to some basic infection prevention practices, right? So this is something we must take away from here, is that we don't need to be hugely highly educated to do something for sepsis. First is to prevent the basic infection in our patients or in our family or in our community. And the second one is preventing the infection to becoming sepsis. So that is where we should understand that any infection can get converted into sepsis under ideal situation for the bacteria and the internal immune system of the body. So that is where the things go wrong. The balance is wrong. So they get into sepsis. And as nurses, we can play a great role. Number one is to prevent infection in all our patients. So you can see here, just by simple in the community itself, just by good hygiene, we can reduce 40% of diarrhea. Now, diarrhea is an infection. Now, that can become sepsis. Safe water and sanitation. So we can reduce the infection that comes from these unclean water. Now that can turn into sepsis. Safe food preparation, good nutrition, all these things are something that we learned in community health, right? Now I don't remember me as a nursing student when I went to community, did anyone teach me that these infections can become sepsis and then lead to septic shock and morts? I doubt. I did not learn that, but I think I learned this when I was in the critical care, and while I was working on this, I connected the community, our basic infection control protocol in the hospital, to that of sepsis. So now everything is interconnected. So sepsis is not a separate topic, separate intervention that we are expected to do. So it is that we can reduce by 50% infection can be reduced by simple hand hygiene and keeping the environment clean in the hospital and providing safe water and sanitation. Infection prevention and control programs, 30% of infection. So can you imagine that the kind of role that all of us play, by simply preventing infection, by following basic infection control practices in the hospital, and most importantly, hand hygiene. Suddenly, everything becomes so simple, but the problem is not simple. The problem is huge. And sepsis is in adults is a very serious condition. And this is something that is from UK. So every country is paying a lot of attention on sepsis. So I asked my intensivist friend that in India, are we paying enough attention to the sepsis burden? Then he said, no, ma'am, I don't think that people think that sepsis is something that is happening inside the ICU. But I think by the time the patient reaches ICU, maybe it is too late. Now look at this one. This is a public, domain where UK government is teaching the public itself, that just ask a question that could it be sepsis if you're having any of these things, slurred speech or confusion, very easy to detect, extreme shivering or muscle pain that happens without, usually you have some some little infection is there, which is then, becoming something like that. Passing no urine in a day, or even in our medical terminologies, we can say that is, oliguria, if not anuria, oliguria. Severe breathlessness, if patient develops breathlessness, then it feels, sorry about that. I'm trying to admit, and, people are still, coming in. So severe breathlessness, and then patients feel that, they are going to die, or they are feeling, I'm very, very sick. So somewhere when we were in nursing, we were told that, please listen to the patient, and if he says that I am not feeling well at all, let us not be the judge and say that, I don't think that you have any problem. Any discoloration of the skin mottled or discolored, this is something UK government is teaching their public, not the healthcare providers. So you can imagine the kind of burden that the country has, realized, and they are doing a lot of public teaching. So I feel that the hospitals can get into public teaching, so that the patients come and get help at the right time before it, oh, Ishta, thank you for that. Just a second. I am trying to, just give me 1 minute, please. Just a second. Let me make Ishita my co-host. Just give me a minute. Ishita, if you can come on the video, I can see you maybe faster. Not able to find you quickly. Just give me a minute. Ishita, can you come on the video, please, Ishita? She's trying to help me, Ishita, but let me see if I can make you host from here. Yeah, done. Thanks, Ishita, for that favor. Thank you very much. So I can concentrate on. So Ishita, now you're the co-host. Okay, thank you. So that is sepsis we are talking about in UK. So I'll be repeating that this, what I would like you to look at is that different acronyms, but these are all the symptoms that can happen in a patient. S stands for, sepsis itself. S stands for shivering and fever and feeling very cold. Now, please remember that we are not only looking after the patients, we are looking after people at home, elderly at home, our friends, our community. E stands for extreme pain and general discomfort. P for pale or discolored skin. S, sleepy and difficult to rouse and confuse. This is your altered sensorium. Then I is saying when the patient says, I feel like I might die, and then this is breathlessness. So these acronyms are created so that, we can remember what are the, signs and symptoms that can happen, So let's come back to, let me just close the video panel so I can see this. Okay. A quick one, though we are going to discuss primarily on adults only, but it is not very difficult to understand children. Breathing fast, and children, we know that when they have fever, they have more chances of getting convulsions. The mottled bluish skin, they can have a rash that does not fade when you press it. This is something very different from the adult. They have a rash that does not change. It's very lethargic and difficult to wake them. Feels abnormally cold to touch. No, these are few things which are special in children. And here, this is actually when all this skin discoloration and all happens, it is already too late. So this is something we need to keep in mind, that can we catch them much before, they actually get worse. Okay. So I'm bringing back, you can remember either time, you can remember either sepsis, these are trademark from the Sepsis Alliance. So this is T is for temperature, higher or lower than normal. So there are two criteria here. The temperature can be higher, or it can even be lower. It can be less than 36 degree, which that will also indicate sepsis. And then signs of infection, may have signs of infection. Now, please remember, there are sepsis that can happen without signs of infection, and even a culture negative sepsis can occur, but they are not very common. They are unusual. Then altered sensorium, when patient is confused or sleepy, we should be doubting that. Then of course the patient has severe pain or discomfort, shortness of breath, then we should doubt whether this is sepsis or not. Now, CDC, I am showing you different information from different sources just to emphasize the point that why is it important that nurses should take some proactive stand in that. I am very sure that those who want to learn about sepsis, they can go to the net and they can learn all these things very easily. But my endeavor here is to emphasize on each one of us that if we are aware, we have to use it for the benefit of the patient when we are working in hospital. So when we watch patients having symptoms, just don't stop by thinking, I am going to inform the doctor. That's it. No, you have to step up and tell the doctor what is it that you are suspecting. Maybe a patient has come with a small abscess in his finger. Okay, and then he is developing shivering, and he is telling that I'm not feeling good today, I don't want to eat breakfast, he's lying down. So your antenna should be clicking and saying, oh my god, maybe from the fingertip he is getting into sepsis. So that is the time that we are expected to escalate and even share our concern with our medical colleagues to say that, doc, he has got a source of infection. Now suddenly he's complaining of, shivering, and he has got fever, and he seems to be, very tired and lethargic. So do you think that, we may be getting into trouble with this patient? And that is when the doctor can take some action for sure. So this is from CDC. Their campaign is called Vital Signs. So when you have any of these, so all these things by now, I think it has become by heart for all of you. That is great. So now, what can nurses do? We are working in emergency wards and ICUs. So especially when patients report to emergency, doesn't matter what age group they are, maybe very, very, very young children, neonates, going up to the elderly, that is it really sepsis? The question is, could it be sepsis? When we are taking the vital signs, can we pay attention to this, to fever, shivering? So whenever somebody comes with fever, we do ask, we are trying to find out what is the reason for the fever. So once you know that there is infection, it is very important to keep in mind that infection can become sepsis. So suddenly history becomes very important. What are the comorbidities? The age becomes very important for us. So all that we learned about knowing your patient becomes very, very critical, whether you are in OPD, med-surg, or telemedicine, or in ICU, wherever we are. While we are working with patients, doing our normal activities of giving medications, taking vital signs, understanding the patient's complaints, we are actually becoming champions to identify that the patient may be going into sepsis. So this is very, very important to be kept in mind. Yes. Okay. So now find severe sepsis. Now this is something I thought that all of us can look into. Is that the warning signs, as I discussed? Let me just admit the people who are there. Okay. So here, fever. We talked about fever, rapid breathing, rapid pulse. This is how the things are happening. So these are all part of our vital signs. Every time when we are checking our patients, they are not to be just taken just lightly, and trend is also important. And then when this is happening, we are now coming to confirm the sepsis, that your oxygen saturation falling down, altered mental status, low blood pressure. Now, one word is the mean arterial pressure. So this is important to be kept in mind, that mean arterial pressures, which is less than 70 mmHg, what does it do? It reduces the perfusion to vital organs. Yes. So this is what we have to really strive hard, that this does not happen, because then that's how the organ starts shutting down, and when they shut down, then it's very difficult to bring them up. So the things do fast, antibiotics and IV fluids. We will understand this in 1 hour bundle very soon. Okay, let's go ahead and look at some more things. Okay. Now, these are some information I thought, very important for as nurses for us to know, so that we take the due, action at the right time when something goes wrong. This sepsis that we are talking about is so common, but we should also know less than 1% of different types of bacteria actually make people sick. However, bacterial infections are the most common cause of sepsis. Okay. And about fungi, 1,500,000 different species. Out of that, 300 species are known to make people sick. Now, what is special about fungi is that those who work in ICU, I am very sure that when patients come with fungisemia, it is almost always fatal. It is very difficult to get the patient out of that, sepsis. And I personally, I have lost my father to fungal infection in the ICU. So I do understand it's very, very difficult. And I really appreciate the ICU nurses who work so hard on such patients. But the most important thing is, before they reach that stage, can we identify and, and even before that, is that can we prevent? So these are the questions that we should ask while you are sitting here in my session. Okay. Now some of the most common viral infections. So we have bacteria. We know only less than 1% can cause infection, but there are 300 species which can make people sick. But this is very difficult to treat. And then viral infections, we are very much aware that virus only contribute to less than 1% of documented sepsis cases. So we know that the culprit is more bacteria. The virus is there, fungi is also there, but they are not as prevalent as this. But still, the millions of bacteria that we have, only less than 1% can cause infection. It's good to know influenza, meningitis, pneumonia, HPV, herpes, rotavirus. These are all our viral infections. And we are now more aware because of corona. We know that uh, viral infections can be really fatal also, right? So let's try to understand a bit more about this bacterias. I'm not going to teach a lot around the kind of bacteria. I just wanted, because uh, nurses who are working in ICU and ER, maybe they are more savvy about this. It's more about understanding that I'm sure that all of us know gram positive and gram negative organisms. And we have heard all these names for sure. I don't need to repeat all that. And we know that the most common culprit, Pseudomonas, if you remember the rest of the name, aeruginosa. Yes, very, very common. And this is one infection which is very difficult to treat. So while I'm asking the question, it is nice that you answer to yourself. Unfortunately, I cannot take answers from all of you, but if you want, you can put it in the chat box. I'll wait for about 5 seconds. Why do you think that it is so difficult to treat Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which is one of the most common gram-negative organisms? Maybe you can put in the chat box. I'm going to wait for. Can you put in the chat box, what do you think that Pseudomonas aeruginosa is difficult to treat? Wow, that's very nice, Mandeep Brar, resistant to all antibiotics. Fantastic. I really, really love that answer. Great, great. That is really, really important. And if we understand that, then we know that why is it important for us to partner with our doctor friends to remind them of de-escalation of antibiotics, when the antibiotics can come down, how long it should run, where is the sensitivity coming, and this is very important. And because of indiscriminate use of antibiotics, not only the patients in the hospital will suffer, even the community, they will start not to respond to our, milder antibiotics. Because I know that now you go to any hospital or any OPD, any clinic for any infection that you need some antibiotics. I don't see any more ampicillin or those kind of erythromycin, those basic antibiotics. I don't see. Straight away they talk about augmentin. That's where it is starting. And many years ago it was not like that. If we have an abscess, we will take amoxicillin, or take an ampicillin for some other kind of infection, if we have a little bit of chest infection, so if you have you might take your erythromycin, those kind of antibiotics is what I have seen doctors prescribing. But now recently I can see in my family also, whenever anybody goes to hospital, everybody gets a lot of augmentins. So now, infection that cause sepsis, we already understood that bacterial is the most common cause of sepsis. So you can get that from your basic infections like your urinary tract or your bacterial pneumonia. From there you are getting into sepsis. Then viral, then all of them are caused by touch body fluid exchange in the air, including less like flu. And viral thing, at least today, after all the COVID activities, it is not something that, I need to emphasize upon, because all of us have already fought a battle and we are still fighting the battle, right? Then fungal infections are most common, appear on the skin, but can be caused by spores inhaled in the lungs or injected into the body. Then parasitic like malaria, which is spread by mosquito. And it is in this order, this is rare fungal, but then its mortality is pretty high. So knowing that, gram positive and gram negative, bacteria, organisms, and then the fungi, Candida albicans, Candida para. This Candida albicans is the most common one that at least I have heard of. Okay. So we understand these are the bacteria that can happen. So here is that the most common ones are Pseudomonas, Staph aureus, and when the Staph aureus becomes MRSA, we are in trouble. We know that. And then fungi, as I told you, not that common, but it is highly, the mortality rate is very high. Now, this is another chart. I would like you to pay a little attention to this. And this, I'm going to only pick up things that is very important for the nurses to know. Okay. So this is like a triad. So all the three infections, they merge at some point, and then we also know that where they are differing also. Now, here, excessive amount of normal pro-inflammatory antibacterial signaling. That means all that, what they call it as mediators, inflammatory, pro-inflammatory. The body is actually reacting to the infection. So there's an excessive amount that is created, but they do respond to antibiotics, and they have different etiologies. Okay, now widest potential patient base, we said the most common one is, bacteria. And this usually leads to classic sepsis, and it's often contracted in the ICU. This is important. The bacterial sepsis is usually in the ICU, may develop resistance to standard antimicrobials. We are aware of that. Now, coming to this one, the viral one, we're talking about, that can cause a cytokine storm, where again, all the fighting mechanisms are going wrong. I mean, that's the base way of understanding. Largest risk factors for this is age and prematurity. Now, we know that these are the risk factors for our COVID-19 also. And underlying disease is usually self-limiting. I mean, it is not that like bacteria, you can have underlying disease, but this is pretty much self-limiting. But then it becomes into a sepsis, then it is a problem. and no response to treatment with antibiotics. So that was our challenge when we had COVID, because we were not sure how can we treat these patients because it is a viral infection. Now, coming to fungi, almost exclusively contracted in the hospital. Now, this is very, very important to remember. And this is more in the community. Viral is usually, picked up from the community. Then severe CNS sequelae and highest mortality. These are some things that we need to understand so that at the right time we are aware, why this information is important for nurses. Why not just know key patient is having infection? I think that's why nurses are critically thinking and decision making brains which are available just near the patient, right? And that's why we are called the champions. Now, all of them merge here. That immunosuppressed patient base is really at a very, very high risk if they are not treated well. And inflammatory organ damage happens in all the three infections. Okay, so I think we have gone through pretty much the most common pathophysiology of our all three infections. Now, a little bit sources of infection. Most of the pneumonias can be caused by gram-negative pathogen, that is your Pseudomonas aeruginosa. We remember that, we talked about it, gram-negative ones. Then very important to know that in hospital, we do have, these are very common pneumonia, right? So enterococci, Staph aureus, gram-negative pathogens. Then many patients are with vascular catheters, Can you see this, This is very important to remember that, what we are understood so far is that there is so much nurses can do to prevent infection in our patients who are already at higher risk. And those who are coming with very normal or infection, which is not yet sepsis, the nurses should be able to identify and pick them up quickly. I mean, that is what I would say is the role of nurses, right? So some more, I thought very important to know, there is a concept when you are treating sepsis is apart from your 1 hour bundle, it is very important to do the source control. This is what they call it as source control. So that means wherever was the source, we should be able to control that to manage the sepsis. Now, if a patient has got intra-abdominal abscess and we don't drain it, and then we are giving antibiotics and vasopressors and fluids, etc., it will not help the patient. So it is important to remember the source control has to happen. It can be empyema, wherever it needs a drainage that needs to be done. Debridement has to be done. And that's why surgery is indicated in some patients, that sometimes you put antibiotic into the cavity. So I'm not going into each diagnosis here, but I'm sure that when you have necrosis and infarction, especially intestinal, you actually do a resection anastomosis. So we know that all these conditions, sometimes we look at them as independent diagnosis. This is the patient is a case of pyelonephritis. That's what we tell. But we need to remember that this patient is also a candidate who is at risk of developing sepsis. And that is when we also keep in mind what are the comorbidities, are they of vulnerable category? So we put all these stories together, and then it suddenly makes a lot of sense to the nurses to work far more with awareness and far more smartly, and actually become the advocate of the patient. So patient safety is not only prevention of HAPU and fall, and that is very, very important. These are very clinical safety features, whereby knowing the related things about a particular diagnosis and keeping in mind that this can convert into sepsis, you can actually help a patient. Yeah. And then very, very important, I would like you to pay attention here. We learn all our bundles, right? And then we say, okay, put the catheters, or the lines only if required, assess daily for the need of that line, and then remove them when not required. So now suddenly it has got very close connection to sepsis, right? So now can we champion? Can we actually, when the doctor comes for rounds, can we be the champion to be asking that, does this catheter needs to be in place? Does this line needs to be in place? Can this be removed? So very, very important. Look at this, infected intrauterine contraceptive device, So all these things can lead to sepsis. So the device removal would be the source control. Sometimes you have to take it out. And that, when the center line shows any signs of infection, you remove the line immediately. We don't say that put betadine on top of it and let's continue, because that's taking a very huge risk, right? If the line shows any signs of inflammation or infection, it should be removed, because you don't want that to become a sepsis. So that's why we are taking care of all this source control. Now, definitive control, where you actually remove, take it off, cholecystectomy when you have cholecystitis, amputation of limbs, when you cannot salvage them. So these are some of the examples of source control. So we kind of understand what all needs to be done to prevent sepsis. How can we identify them? And also, what are the organisms which are responsible for sepsis? Then we also discussed about how to do source control, and I'm sure that by now we are very much appreciating the huge role the nurses can play in detecting, early detection, prevention, and then most important thing is early intervention. Now this is very, very important to keep that in mind. Now we are only now going to look into the 1 hour sepsis bundle. So here, nurses, once we understand this, I don't think that any one of us will give an excuse to say that I did not get the antibiotic from the pharmacy. I think we are definitely going to fight for it and say that this patient is sepsis. So I have to give the antibiotic within 1 hour. Now, within 60 minutes, it is expected that most common 5 things to be done as required for the patient. So time 0 is the time of presentation. When the patient comes to emergency department or a patient is in ward and they are developing this, so there are a few things that needs to be done. So this is the key takeaway for all of us. One is to measure the lactate level immediately and obtain blood culture. So when the patient comes to ER, I'm very, very sure all the nurses who are working in ER, you must be aware of this. When a patient comes, it is within 60 minutes. There are other things, like when you have patient coming with MI angina, we have something called door to needle time. That is when the patient reaches the ER and then reaches the cath lab, for the primary angioplasty. So this is another campaign that runs, but for sepsis, within 60 minutes, this is called your 1 hour sepsis bundle. Few years ago it was called the 60 it was called the 3 hours and 6 hours bundle. Now it is all clubbed into 1 hour bundle. So first thing is to measure the lactate level, second thing is to obtain the cultures, and the third one is then start the antibiotic without delay. This is an empirical antibiotic that the doctors start, because we are not yet sure what will be the antibiotic that will be sensitive to the organism, but based on the source of infection. Let me hydrate my throat. Based on the source of infection, doctor will decide a broad spectrum antibiotic that needs to be given by the nurses without delay. So taking blood samples, giving the antibiotic. Now we appreciate the why is it important to give antibiotic. For patient's sake, this is very, very critical. Then rapid administration of fluid. This is very important. So what happens is that when the infection happens, the pro-inflammatory changes that happens, it causes vasodilation. The vessels are vasodilating, so it needs more fluid to fill up this blood vessel. So you have to give this, and we should pray. If the patient responds to this, then it is actually a good sign. But if the patient is not responding, then you have to apply vasopressors. The first is fluid resuscitation. This is called fluid resuscitation. So you have to give 30 ml per kg crystalloid for hypotension, or if the lactate is more than 4 millimole. The normal lactate is expected to be less than 2 millimole per liter. Okay. Then give vasopressors. So this is your 1 hour bundle. By watching the patient, there are criteria for starting all this. So it's like vasopressors are started if hypotension during or after fluid resuscitation, the mean arterial pressure is 65 mm or less, or 70 mm or less. So you have to start with vasopressors. Okay. So now let's go ahead and understand each of the bundle section a little bit more closely. So serum lactate it actually tells us what is the tissue perfusion, and we know that this is a byproduct of anaerobic metabolism because your oxygen does not reach. There are other reasons in the studies that they show, but the most easiest one is to remember that because of all this vasodilation, the blood pressure coming down, the cells they need, and they also have a lot of water going into the tissues because the vessels start to leak. The blood vessels, as we learned, one is vasodilation, and because of all this, WBCs, all the fighters are coming inside to remove all these bacteria, etc. The byproducts are many of these, we call it interleukins and your, what you call TNF and procalcitonin. So there are many such chemicals which are released, which kind of causes, one is because of all these actions happening, the blood starts to clot, and then it also starts to leak. So when it leaks, the tissues, they get lot of fluid inside, and because of the fluid, the oxygen cannot go also. So there is lot of challenges happening inside the body. If the fluid is less, obviously your circulation is impaired. When the circulation is impaired, the tissues will get into anaerobic metabolism because your aerobic metabolism is hampered. Because of all that, you have serum lactate production. So that is why you keep a close watch on serum lactate. So the initial lactate is usually more than 2 millimole when you have sepsis, and then you continue to measure them every 2 to 4 hours to guide the resuscitation so that you can normalize the lactate. Okay, so these are the recommendations that is coming from this Surviving Sepsis campaign. Okay, and this is by and large the guideline followed by all the countries also. Then very important that you take the blood cultures before giving the antibiotics. One must know, even if the doctors are not writing it, you have to make sure that your cultures are obtained before, because after giving the antibiotic, if the cultures are taken, your sensitivity can be not very accurate. So it is very important that you take the cultures so you can identify the pathogen very, very clearly, so you can then give definitive treatment. So this drawing of the culture becomes paramount important. So appropriate cultures, you actually take aerobic and anaerobic both. And then soon after you take the blood cultures, you make sure that you are administering the antibiotic. Okay, so that is your number 2. Number 3 is actually giving the antibiotic itself. So whatever the doctors has ordered, you can do your sensitivity test and start giving the antibiotic. Now this is very, very important that this is starting. So once we understand this, at least the nurses who are working in the hospital should make enough noise in case the ordered antibiotic you are not getting in time. Because now you understand that if you don't start the antibiotic on time, the patient can get worse. So we have to administer the medicine on time. Then administering of the IV fluid. Now, why we are, though the guidelines may look very simple, now very important to remember that the order is to give 30 ml per kg of intravenous fluid to be completed within 3 hours. Now, if the doctor says 3 hours, give so much in the first 15 minutes. Now, very important to follow that. Now to follow that, nurses should know the administration rates. So suddenly the basic things like, can I calculate and know how many drops per minute or how many ml per hour I am expected to give. Now suddenly those information becomes very critical when nurses are working in emergency or in anywhere where the fluid resuscitation is being given. They should be very carefully monitored that the patient is remaining fluid responsive. That means your vitals are being monitored very closely. You're giving the fluid, and if they are responding, what should happen? The BP should start to come up, your heart rate should start to come down. That means the patient is responding. SpO2 can change. So vital signs, then the fluid, they start having very, very close connections. Basics and the most difficult condition to manage, they're going together. Now, as we discussed earlier, that if anytime during the fluid resuscitation patient is getting worse and not responding in the first hour of the fluid resuscitation, vasopressors are recommended, so that your mean arterial pressure can be kept higher, so your vital organs get the blood flow. You are trying to protect the vital organs while you are treating the patient with sepsis, so that the patient can survive that episode. So all that we are trying to do is, preserve the life. So now putting it all together, 1 hour bundle. Measure the lactate level, obtain the cultures, administer broad spectrum antibiotics, administer the fluid challenge and the vasopressors, and then keep measuring the lactates. So now there is another test. So we are going to look at some of the tests that we will be doing in the sepsis in a moment. So once again, putting it all together, high flow oxygen, blood cultures, give antibiotics, give fluid challenge, measure lactate, and measure urine output. Now, this is from the UK campaign. Okay. So these are things that you can keep in mind. It does not mean that there in our sepsis bundle, it is not written oxygen, so we are not going to give oxygen. Of course, it goes without saying that you're going to give oxygen, monitor the vital signs, you are going to measure the urine output, and I'm very sure in all these patients, all of them will have a line, central line, and of course urinary catheter. All this will be in place, so you can monitor the patient very closely and titrate your fluid. Suddenly all the central line hemodynamic monitoring becomes very important. As I told you, this class is not learning about managing the shock, trying to understand what is sepsis. Okay. Now we must know that the sepsis has got different levels. The first one is the systemic inflammatory response syndrome. That means patient is having some kind of infection, and the patient is going to exhibit signs of SIRS, that is systemic inflammatory response syndrome. Temperature going up, respiratory rate going up, heart rate going up, WBCs can go up or it can come down. Okay, this is about neutrophils here, 10% band, and PCO2 also going down. Why? Because our respiratory rate is going up. So that is the beginning of systemic inflammatory response syndrome. So that is your SIRS. And soon after that, if two of them happens, and then you are calling it this patient has got sepsis. So we'll come to our Q-SOFA, which is now the most common tool that is being used in most of the ICUs in a moment. Okay. So confirmed or suspected infection, and you have two SIRS. That means patient is going into sepsis. Then after that, sepsis is happening, but patient is also showing multi-organ damage because patient is going into persistent hypotension and the lactate levels are not coming down. So from here, the patient goes into severe septic shock. That means persistent sepsis. And this is from here, there is a terminology called MODES. I don't know if any one of you are using in your ICUs, multi-organ dysfunction syndrome. That means more than two organs are involved and they are not responding. So we know that the mortality rate in these patients are going to be extremely high. So it is good to know that, these are the stages, and we are actually struggling that, the moment patient has infection, we should be able to watch the patients, that they don't get into this, from SARS, they should not get into sepsis. So we can watch the patients very carefully and stop them here itself, when from the infection, they should not get into that. And this is where you can identify the patient, that, there is something not going right with the patient. So that's a nice way to play the advocacy for our own patients. Okay. So now when you're managing sepsis, there are two things. One is, keeping a tab on blood lactate. We talked about that. And this is one of the famous, blood tests that is being done, that is PCT. So one is blood culture is taken. It will take time for it to come back. What is the culture that is growing? Then the procalcitonin, it's very important to know that's a pro-inflammatory test that we do. And this one, it's got a very short half-life. That means, the more that you're giving, this can be used as a predictor that the patient is responding or not responding. Okay. So if you go to the website of Cigna Healthcare Academy, I have put a latest article from Society of Infection Control from US. It's a very good article about the entire treatment. So if you want, when you register, you can easily download the article. Rather than the link, I have put the PDF there. So please go ahead and you can download that. And those who want to learn more about it, you can always go there and learn. Okay. So procalcitonin is something that is, done frequently to track how the patient is responding. Now, this is a nice picture I found. I thought I can once again emphasize on that. When patients are being treated for sepsis, is that we already learned early administration of antibiotics, fluids, and vasopressors, without getting late, early enteral feeding, and if patient is hyperglycemic, insulin therapy, and lung protective ventilation. In simple terms, lung protective ventilation would be low volume, So those who understand ventilation, this is low volume ventilation. So, and urinary catheter, and then of course lines, that those are required to make sure that, all these drugs which are being given, Norepi, Epi, and vasopressin, so the what you call the purple ones are not the ones which are recommended. These are like queries, and these are no more, uh, indicated. So most important is these blue ones, which are here. Now, this also plays a very important role. Now, in all this, can't you see that nurses' role becomes so important? Doctors can order all these things, but most important that, are we up to the level of paying the right attention and the seriousness to all the orders and making sure that they are executed in a timely manner? So this is a question that we should ask to ourselves. That is where we should be prepared to accept that, responsibility. Now, that's very important. Now, once again, we are talking about broad spectrum antibiotics that we are giving, and then putting the, central venous catheter. We already discussed about this. I'm not getting into hemodynamic monitoring, but then obviously, if you have central line, A line, you are going to watch them to make sure the CVPs are maintained higher than 8 mm mercury. Mean arterial pressure should be more than 65 mm mercury, and your mixed central venous oxygen monitoring, hematocrit, blood transfusion were required. So all these things are to be put it all together. The patient is actually being managed from various different angles. And I'm saluting all the nurses who are in the ER and in the ICU, who are actually saving patients along with the doctors. Now let's look at QSOFA. Now QSOFA, I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to get to the QSOFA in a minute. Now, just to understand all these organs, all these organs can get involved when your body gets into sepsis, the compromisation of the intestinal barriers, the peritonitis can happen in the liver, impaired detoxification, so DIC, hypo and hyperglycemia, hyperbilirubinemia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, thymic involution, apoptosis means it's actually death of the cell, and lymphangitis, encephalopathy for the brain, heart failure, cardiomyopathy, decreased cardiac output, splenomegaly, atrophy of lymphoid follicles, renal failure. Is there something that is left in our body? Every single organ can be involved when you have sepsis. So when I was an ICU nurse, so these were the things that during rounds we used to actually discuss with the clinician, and the clinician always took time to explain what all things are happening in this patient. So from all the ankle, every single organ has to be evaluated on daily rounds to see what is actually happening in this particular patient. Not that everybody will have the similar symptoms. So now this is the tool that is used in the ICU. This is called SOFA, sepsis related organ failure assessment. So an equal or more than 2 of this criteria means the patient is actually in sepsis. That's what. So what are the 6 criterias in the initial SOFA? We will come to Q SOFA in a minute. That reduction in your PaO2 and FiO2 need increasing, that is one. Hypotension, or the need for vasopressors, platelets are coming down, creatinine and oliguria, bilirubin going up, and reduced Glasgow Coma Scale. This was the initial SOFA. It is still being used by intensivists. Now the QUIC SOFA was created so that the sepsis can be identified very quickly by nurses or even anybody at home also if required. So QUIC SOFA is QUIC sepsis related organ failure assessment. Now there are only these 3 criteria: respiratory rate more than 22, altered sensorium, altered cognition, or systolic blood pressure less than 100. Now the systolic blood pressure less than 100. Now, any one single criteria is not enough. You should have at least 2 of the criteria. Now, counting respiratory rate becomes very important. I would like to emphasize on all the people who are still remaining in the class 180 plus. Very, very important that nurses must pay attention to respiratory rate very closely. And we know that this is also part of our MUSE or news in the hospital. And the research evidence says respiratory rate monitoring is probably the most weakest in the vital signs assessment by nurses, because we do not pay enough attention to count the respiration of the patient for 1 full minute. So if we are not doing this, we will obviously miss this. Okay, altered sensorium, respiratory rates, and systolic blood pressure. Just see this, that this 100, it's not talking about 65, 70 or anything, So one should, this is very important to know the criteria, but also important to know what is the patient's basic vital signs. That is also important. Okay, if the patient's regular BP is around 100, then if it is 100, then you are not going to think about. Now, all these things usually happens with a patient who has got some source of infection. Not always, but there will be some source of infection. Patient is admitted with gastritis or, colitis, or it could be any kind of infection that's happening in the body. And on top of that, while you are doing the vital signs, so this, if this is, identified, you can inform the doctor. So I was attending a webinar in US where they said they used this and they reduced the death from sepsis by more than I think 35%. That's a huge benefit to the patient. And the nurses played a very critical role, that all the nurses in the medical surgical ward, oncology ward, telemedicine ward, they called it MOST. They called it MOST. That means medical surgical, oncology, a surgical ward, and telemedicine. So they called the project, that they included most areas. So when they did that, they trained the nurses. So they had a very special form that was created so that, the nurses can easily document. So something like your MUSE and NEWS, they had that, sepsis identification tool. So now, once again, understanding the source is identified if any equal or more than two of this criteria is there. That is temperature, pulse, respiration, and WBC. We already discussed that. Now, QSOFA, respiratory status more than 22, hemodynamic, systolic BP less than 100, and mentation, altered sensorium or altered mentation of any degree. No GCS numbers here. It's just that any change in the mentation of the patient. So they're all 1 point. So you are going to know that if it is either two or more, that means either two, any two of the things, if it is there, you have to escalate and talk to the doctor. Then coming the sepsis of, severity, from starting from the mild derangement in the vital signs going all the way to death. And this can happen if we are not working somewhere here. So when this happens, if we are not taking care, then the patient goes here. And if the patient is responsive to IV fluids, maybe he may come back. If not, he will remain hypotensive. The lactate continues to go up, goes into septic shock and not respond. And unfortunately, patient can die in the end. So that's the entire spectrum of sepsis. And nurses play a very important role in all stages of this, okay? Now, we already talked about all these things. Once again, I'm just summarizing that all our systems can get into dysfunction once we get sepsis. So it's actually a big challenge for all the caregivers, the doctors and nurses in the ICU to get this patient out of this. This is actually very difficult. And we know that, from the nursing care perspective also, this becomes very difficult because of their profession is so poor. They will have skin breakdown, pressure ulcers. Even that becomes very important to, difficult to manage. So these are things to be kept in mind. Now the some of the lab tests which are usually done, because we have to detect the infection, clotting problem, liver, kidney function, impaired oxygen, electrolyte imbalances. So you will do all these tests. There will be more that are being done. This is related to coagulation, PT, PTT, D dimer, and oxygenation, lactate status. Separately, you can do blood sugar, endotoxin, procalcitonin. And there are other few tests based on the availability and the lab that can do what and what level of ICU you're working in. So the basic tests are this, and of course you do the cultures, and then you look for the source, and then accordingly you will do your urine culture, take wound secretions for culture, respiratory secretions for culture, and if there is an abscess anywhere in the body, you will take a culture from the abscess. So understanding the basis of sending all these investigations is very important, so that we are aware that why these tests are being done. And in addition to all the lab tests, they can ask for a CT scan to understand where is the source, ultrasound for understanding anything from the intra-abdominal cavity, if there is any abscess or any alterations there, CT scan and MRI to look at the source of infection from anywhere else, MRI to see that if there is something, osteomyelitis, it can also cause sepsis. So infection anywhere in the body can lead to this. So this is like, we understood that these are all the lab tests and these are all the other tests that can be done. So there's a whole battery of tests that will be done to understand where is the source of infection while we are managing the sepsis. And if you already know what is the source of infection, nurses can play a most important role in identifying them. So nurses' role, all these things we already learned. So I would summarize by saying the nurses can, one is to prevent infection. This is very, very important in the hospital. Patients who are there, we can always prevent. So hospital acquired infection suddenly becomes very, very important, whether it is your CLABSI or CORTI or SSI. All of them can, your VAP, SSI, suddenly all the highs become really high potential for sepsis. So once we recognize that, we know that it is better to prevent them. If you prevent them, that much of reduction in sepsis is happening inside the hospital. Unfortunately, if it is happening, detect them early and detect and escalate early and initiate the treatment as told without delay. Very important that, we should start all this. So it's actually pretty basic. But why did I do this class was to make you understand and to make you aware. Maybe many of you already know all this information, but to know that what to do with all this information, because we are not handling something very mild. We are handling something which has a potential to start from SIRS to go all the way to MODS, multi-organ dysfunction syndrome, which is leading to death of patients, right? So that is where this is very important for us to know that, we are not handling a very mild infection. Now we know who are the people who are at risk. So if those patients who are vulnerable, even if they have a small infection, we should be on the watch out. Suddenly it becomes very important that taking vital signs and understanding the importance of vital signs becomes paramount. If we don't count the respiratory rate properly, we may miss the cue so far. And if you miss the cue so far, the patient will get into sepsis. And the delay that is caused in identifying the sepsis can obviously be the determining factor whether the patient is going to live or die. Now, I told you about this study in US, where they use the nurse-led, initiative, and this is before and this is after. Can you see almost 50% reduction in between these 2 years? And imagine this is happening in 2010 and 11, and we are sitting in 2020. And even in 2020, the risk of, patients having infection and sepsis in hospital, it has not gone down. The data is still huge. And in India, we really don't have any data. So now this is from that study only where they started working and they used the nurses. They called it evaluation of severe sepsis screening tool. So I was looking at the literature, then I found you can use a paper-based model, or you can even incorporate this into your news or muse, so you can use this as a, checklist, or inside the muse itself, you can incorporate, so they can escalate these things at the right time. If any one of you sitting in the class, those who are going to uh, watch this video at any point of time, if you think that you would like to champion a project around this so that the nurses plays the right role of identifying sepsis, please go ahead. You can contact me and I will see. I can tell you how to make it happen, because nurses alone cannot do this. The doctors have to be party to that. I am already in discussion with Indian Sepsis Forum to see that, how can we get together and do something for betterment of patients. Now, SBAR is something that all of us, got trained. Now imagine they used this effectively in this study in US, right? And I just added this here because it's very important. They train the nurses that how to inform a doctor when they find they are suspecting, sepsis. So it is pretty much as what we are training our nurses, but only thing that here it is very, very clear that how to, here they're talking about a Mr. Smith admitted early in the morning with cellulitis and his left lower extremity. He states that the pain in his leg has increased and the redness has extended since admission. That is the situation. Okay. So patient, just cellulitis, and he's telling that it has extended. Background is that he's 82-year-old man. So already the nurse is telling the patient is at risk, history of heart failure and diabetes. So many comorbidities. And he reported a wound in his left lower leg present for about 2 weeks. He arrived in the emergency department yesterday afternoon, complaining of an increased pain, warmth, redness, and blistering. Now, why am I reading all this? Because I'm taking this opportunity to emphasize on all of you that knowing the full form of SBAR is not good enough. It is very important that how are we practicing it. Then the entire assessment of the patient, including his WBC count and blood cultures, everything is being informed. And the recommendation, I would like to request an order for a chemistry panel CBC with differential lactic acid level. Can you imagine? This is what the nurses have been trained to talk to the doctors, because in all the sepsis discussion and literature, the role of the doctor who receives this information from the nurse is also very, very important, because if the doctor thinks it's not too much of a big deal, then he will not order the right thing. So here they have actually told the nurses to remind the doctors that, let's send this test so that, we are not missing anything. So this is the way they ran that particular project. I'm sharing this because I would like you to go away from here not just learning and saying that, yeah, there are a lot of discussion happened around this particular topic, but to go away from here identifying and recognizing the most important role nurses actually play in hospitals and in community to prevent sepsis. So this is something that I already discussed at the beginning of the session, and now I'm putting it back here just to say that what an important role nurses have got to play in preventing the infection and also preventing the evolution of infection to sepsis. Very, very, very important. Okay. So with that, I have, completed the session with what I need to give it to you. Now the class is not completely finished, so let me tell you what more can you do. Okay. One is that this video will be available on Signia Healthcare Academy. You can go back and view it any number of times, or you can go ahead and share the link and more people can view this video. And the second thing is that article that I told you, if you are interested to learn more about the treatment, you can download and read them. And third thing is that, when you go back to your hospital, think about it. Is there something more that you would like to get involved? So I've already spoken to the doctor from Indian Sepsis Forum. So if any of you want to know more about it and do something more for patients and the protocol around it, you can contact and I will see how best we can facilitate that. And yes, the certificate, if you need for this particular course, I usually do not give any participation certificate. So this time, certificate is available on our website, Signia Healthcare Academy, after you finish the post test. And this post test will be available for a very nominal fees of 59 rupees. And if you are interested, you can pay the fees, then go through the test. And let me tell you, the test is also designed in such a manner that you can learn more. There are some very interesting case studies there for you to look at it and come up with some very basic understanding. So you can go to Signia Healthcare Academy, select the course, and then go in the course itself. It says that if you need the certificate, there is a link to go to the quiz. And when you go to the quiz, it will ask for a payment of 59 rupees. So you can pay that, take the quiz, and then download your certificate from there itself. But 80% marks is required. So this is for those serious learners who would like to test the knowledge that they have gained here and make it more pakka in their mind. So all the test questions are also designed in such a manner that you will learn, because there are explanations given to the more critical questions over there. So I hope that, uh, all of you will try and go and take the test, and it's up to you, but the video is free for all to watch. And with that, I would say thank you so much. And I think we are pretty much in time. I was not sure because I had more than 60 slides. I wasn't sure whether I'll be able to even finish that on time. So my email ID and my number is right there on the screen. And if anyone wants to know more about sepsis and what can be done in your hospital so that the sepsis nurses can take a more proactive role in supporting our medical fraternity to reduce the occurrence of sepsis in hospital, uh, definitely I can help you. Maybe we can help you to get in touch with the Indian Sepsis Forum, and we can do something together, because I'm really, really keen that if someone would like to incorporate this, sepsis, the Q sofa into their news or muse, then it can be very easily picked up. And when you pick it up, then you are actually helping a lot and lot of patients to save their lives and to have, uh, more safer nursing around them. I think that was my greediness when I looked at this topic, to say the nurses can really play a much higher and responsible role there. And I always try to see that how can we showcase the strength of nurses in healthcare delivery system, that this is very, very important, that we play the right role. So thank you so much everyone for being here. And I look forward to having you on our site. Okay, one more announcement is that we are very soon releasing two more online learning programs. One is interpretation of arrhythmias, which is almost 4 hours of video content will be uploaded with a very nominal fees. And then we have another completely fully comprehensive pain management modules that is close to 3 hours of video content. So please go ahead and watch out our website. And if you want to know anything more about it, you can always drop a message. You can always call me, write to me, available for all of you, so that if you need any other programs, any other lectures, let me know, and we will see that how much can we offer free. We will do that, and what cannot be done, obviously we will develop and put it on our website, so that you can go ahead and learn at your own place and at on time. So please spread this message that this video will be available for everyone on our signehealthcareacademy.com. And if you still cannot remember, don't worry, my number is there. You can take a screenshot and call, send me a message anytime. And thank you so much for being here. And God bless you. And I hope that you will go back and become the champions our patients needs to prevent sepsis in your hospital. And the information here will also help you to be a champion around your community, in your family, in your friends, because you know that this is what I should look out for. It is not rocket science, but very important for us to play that role, taking very, very simple vital signs, but giving so much of insight into the patient condition is something that we should really appreciate. So no vital signs are simple, oh, just taking vital signs. No, that gives a lot of information. So today onwards, you will pay a lot of attention to vital signs. You're going to pay a lot of attention to your news and muse form, and what the patient is trying to tell and what the patient is not trying to tell, both observation and what is he telling. Don't take anything very lightly and say, no, I don't think you're having this is what you're having. Let's not decide for the patient. Let's become the champion of the patient. And with that thought, final thought, thank you so much for all your kind words that you're sending me on the message. Thank you very much for that. And now I will share, and any one of you, I'm going to stop the recording now. And after that, I will like to